Spoken Labour. I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up in a room surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I could dream of remembering. I haven't walked back into the past or scratched on the doors of my origins, where it all came from, since I held up that cape for the last time.
Return to Kent Town 10th Year Anniversary Edition is a revised version of Andy N's first poetry book. The book can be purchased from Amazon and it contains numerous additional material.
Spoken Labour.
Hi, it's Andy Ann from Spoken Label. Spoken Label was originally set up at the beginning of 2016, and records show it started off really as a one-off podcast chatting to writers, poets and artists. Over time, it became monthly, then weekly, and occasionally nowadays it goes on that to a more regular basis. To date, I've done over 330 sessions, and I'm always looking for new poets, writers, artists, singer-songwriters, general interesting creative people to come onto the podcast. You can find this on all the usual networks over Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Podbay, and dozens of others. But it does have a central database of Spoken Label, which is all one word, .bandcamp.com. Obviously now, to help me with the running costs of this podcast, I'm always grateful for any kind of donation to assist me with it. You can either do the donation through the Bandcamp page by putting in a fee to download one of the free podcasts, or send it over to my PayPal to aen1mpo at yahoo.co.uk. My email address again is aen1mpo at yahoo.co.uk. Enjoy the podcast. Take care. Bye.
Spoken Labour.
Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on a Wednesday. It's not Wednesday, it's Thursday evening. Oh God, my week's just flying by. I'm losing track today. Anyway, we're over today to speak to a wonderful thriller writer. Now, this is quite a good story, this one, because the lady in question got in touch with me on, I think it was Matchmaker.fm, and I knew the name and I couldn't think why. And then I was going for the name and I said to Amanda, my wife, I don't know his name. Then Amanda says to me, oh yeah, I read an extract from one of her books. Amanda's old reading about extracts series recently, where she's reading novel extracts from writers. It was brilliant. So it made sense to get the writer on today. So, okay, JP, would you like to introduce yourself to people first of all? I've not even asked where you're from, so you're going to have to tell me, because I don't know this, I should have asked you. Tell us, obviously, a bit about yourself as a person, where you're from, and what led you into your creativity, and we'll start from there.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I am across the pond from you in Vermont. And for those listeners who don't know, it's a very tiny state in the US, and we're tucked right up next to the Canadian border. And we have incredibly long winters here, very cold, long, dark winters. And so I think that's part of where my creativity comes from, is just kind of out of desperation to get through those winter months.
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
where we are in England, we're used to the rain and we get lots of it. Where snow, you get the snow probably, we get the rain. So yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay, where did all your creativity come from originally then? Because we're going to come into what you're writing in a minute, but I want to hear what led you into your writing.
Yeah, I've loved writing ever since I was a little kid. I used to make books with, that were like stapled together and would give you cuts on your fingers when you were flipping through the pages. But I've always been drawn to just reading and stories and books and movies, and have just always been a huge bookworm. And so I have written on and off most of my life.
Yeah, it's interesting because on your bio itself, you're stating like you have a lot of recurring themes of nature, art, and folklore. I'm really getting into English folklore at the moment. So, did you love a folklore come when you were much younger as well? Then,
Somewhat. I think I've always just been drawn to mysteries, and I love to think that there are things in the world that can't be described by science, or um, can't be explained away um, by facts. I love the thought of just there being mystery out in the world. And so I think that's where the attraction to folklore and the fact that it's all very historical. I really love history, and I love reading about the old ways of doing things, traditional ways of doing things. And so I think that kind of ties in.
brilliant, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I can see it with the book. With what I've read of your work, you can definitely see the love of folklore in it as well. Definitely. Now, I think we better talk directly about your two major series to date, really, because they're both radically different, and people will read them, and which they should do, because like you so to date, you've actually and your website. So you've got. I'm just trying to get the website up now. Yeah, you've currently to date done two series that I can see, or the two ones we'll talk about anyway. And obviously, number one is your monsters in the Green Mountains. So we'll go on to that one first because I've just recently read the current book in the series, Stillwater Lake. I've absolutely loved it. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. So tell us about the origin of this series.
Yeah, so thank you very much, first of all. This series was so much fun to write. And what I found as I was writing this was that I'm not actually very skilled at writing series, in that I couldn't have the same characters throughout the whole series. I tend to get bored very easily. And to me, part of the creativity comes from creating a brand new story each time. So while this is a series, what ties it together is really that the aspects of folklore and the fact that the books are all set in very rural, really remote parts of Vermont in the deep wilderness areas. So it is a different set of character for each book, but I love spending time in the woods. We camp and hike quite a bit, and I just love being out in nature, like pretty much wherever and whenever I can get out there. And it's hard to be out spending time in the woods without thoughts of like, what if this happened, or what was that noise, or my busy brain is always kind of coming up with ideas. So I think it was probably on one of those hikes that the idea was first planted for the first book, and then it kind of snowballed from there.
What I particularly liked about with the current books, certainly, like was with Stillwater Lake, was I loved all the way that, and this sums up what you just answered your own question here to a degree, were all the varying viewpoints in it. And I think it's really tricky to get away with what you've done there, because I've read a number of books where they've had a lot of viewpoints like you've brought into the book. And I think you can easily lose people with that sometimes. You didn't, brilliantly executed, really well paced. But was that the plan along with that book, to have so many viewpoints in the book?
I didn't intend necessarily to have as many as we ended up with, but I did want it to be, I wanted the story to be told from multiple narrators' points of view. That was actually inspired by a book, and I cannot remember the name of it, but it was a book by John Saul, and it was this very campy kind of summer thriller novel, and it had the viewpoints of a couple teenagers woven in with the adults' narratives, and I really liked that. And so I think that was kind of playing in the back of my mind. I definitely wanted some teen characters in the book, but then I didn't want it to end up as like a teen or a young adult novel. So I did obviously have my main characters be adults. But yeah, I enjoy telling story from different points of view. I think it can be tricky during the writing process, but I think it can make for a really well-rounded story, as long as, like you said, you're not introducing maybe too many characters too soon, or not having them have enough voice where you kind of, the reader might forget, like, wait, who is this character again?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. It's well done on that one straight away with that. So, and I felt like the pacing of the book was really, really good. It was, and I can recommend everyone to read this book immediately. So, because when I get a chance of this weekend coming, which will be before this podcast goes out, I'm going to be putting a review up and a Goodreads for you straight away with this as well for a 5 out of 5. Right? It definitely deserves it. So, now
Thank you so much.
I also want to touch on as well. I've not a chance to properly go through this yet, but I will. Is your other series as well? Because obviously, people are wondering, you've done the second series as well on, I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Is it Tight Waters? Have I got that right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, well, tell us about this series. I've got to sit down and do this properly, to be honest with you. This sounds completely different, this series.
Yes. Yep. So yes. So the Tate Water series I did early on. It was originally, those were books, I think 3 and 4, that I wrote in my writing history. And I thought the story was very interesting, but you're right, it's very different in that those are more, I would say, like traditional mysteries. And they are set here in the area where I live. And they were, one reader said that they reminded them of kind of a Bridget Jones and Nancy Drew mashup.
I can see the Nancy Drew bit in it. But
Yeah.
Bridget Jones and Nancy Drew, that's a heck of a mixture, that one. Brilliant.
Well, Tate herself is quite a, she's quite a character. She's very sarcastic and spunky, and she tries really hard, but she does often get herself into predicaments that, maybe with a little bit more foresight or thinking ahead, she could have prevented. But she has a good heart, and she's trying to do the right thing. She runs a securities firm by day, and then by night, she is kind of like a secret vigilante. So women contact her who've kind of not seen justice through the court system, and she sort of takes care of the bad guys after hours. But what I found with that series was, I think that's when I truly discovered that I am not maybe cut out for series writing. I did start a book 3, so you'll notice that there's just 2 books in that series. I started a book 3, and as of yet, it's not been finished. It's a fun story to write. I think her character is interesting to me, and I like that it's set kind of in my my area of the world. But I do feel that I'm more drawn maybe to a little bit darker and a little bit more suspense versus traditional mystery.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's sometimes you've got to write these books to find your voice on it. I've got to give a plug to here. I don't know who said this to you. I've just had to double check this. Somebody compared these books to Stephanie Plum, and I didn't know who Stephanie Plum was, but I've just spotted here. It was obviously a series of books wrote by a woman called Janet Everdog, and it's described as a spunky combination of Nancy Drew and Dirty Harry. And I'm like, oh. That's a heck of a combination, that. I think the Nancy Drew and Bridget Jones is wild enough, but Nancy Drew and Dirty Harry. Oh, wow. Oh, no, brilliant. Fair play to you that straight away. So I take it then, obviously, looking more forward to yourself then. Your next direction is going to be probably heading toward book 6 of Monsters in the Green, and I'm presuming, isn't it? Unless you've got something else in mind.
Well, as of right now, my plan is that the Monsters in the Green Mountain series ended with Stillwater Lake. That was book 5.
I was wondering that, because it felt like a finale to me. That's why, right?
Yes. So my first love is really standalone novels. So I have one in the works now that should be coming out this fall. And that's kind of returning to my roots as just focusing really on keeping that edge of your seat suspense, but having it be a standalone where, the story is going to completely wrap up at the end of of the book.
Yeah, people obviously double check, and I've not read these. I know you've done 3 other standalone books prior to these 2 series, certainly. So,
Yes.
how does it feel to? Now, I don't give any spoilers away in this. We'll let people guess. But how does it feel to be returned to a standalone novel after doing a couple of series?
Yeah, it feels really good. I think that I'm glad that I did this series work, and I think that I learned from both experiences. So that's always helpful. And I think as a writer, you're just always learning and growing as you go along. But yes, it feels good to be going back and doing a standalone. And I'm just curious to see like what will come next after this one.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm always of the opinion with writing, you let the muse take you, don't you? Or if you get involved in characters, the characters will come to you and say, yes, you must write my book now. And that sort of feel. Is that what you're like with your standalone books, really?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought so. Now, obviously, before we go on to the last question, always call the hard sell, I want you to tell people about your readers club on your website. I think this looks a really good idea for people to do this. So tell us about your readers club then. If people want to sign up for your readers club, what happens there?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I send a letter out once a month via email to my readers, and I share book recommendations. So books that I've read in the suspense thriller genre. I like to share recommendations. I have little updates from my writing studio. So I'll have some information about what I'm working on or where I'm stuck, or kind of what's going on in the writing world for me. And then I also usually have a feature at the end with some upcoming events that I'm going to, where places where people could meet up with me. And I also sometimes just include, I love just miscellaneous bits of weird trivia. Like one time I wrote about Victorian death rituals because I read something about it. I was reading some books about it, and I thought that's so interesting. So just strange little bits of trivia I like to include in the Readers Club letters too.
Really? No, I think it's a great idea that when you do newsletters, these little strange stories. I think they call it in the news in England. And finally, sometimes it can be funny, sometimes it's just plain strange. But again, it gives that, so it gives people a sense of your humour, I think, as well, which I think is a great idea. So brilliant. Okay, to wrap up, let's get on to the hard sell. Okay, so I want to give you time to do a bit of reading for us today as well. So, where can people first of all get hold of you if they want to find out more information?
Yeah, so my website is jpchoquette.me. So it's CHOQUETTE.me. And I always have a hard time getting to my website. I think you have to put the HTTPS in front of it, because otherwise you get an error message. So my mom has texted me more than once and said, there's something wrong with your website. Because I think it was missing that. I think it's some kind of a security feature, but anyway, or if you just Google my name, I'm sure it will pop up that way.
Yeah, well, you certainly won't find many people with your name anyway. If you look at it online, that's for sure of it. I'll say your books then. Where can people get hold of your books? Wrap up.
The books, yeah, the books are all on. Let's see, Kobo, Goodreads, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think they're also on a few subscription services like Scribd and some of the library book services. So I think you should be able to find them just about anywhere. But you can always find me also on Instagram if you're ever having a problem locating one of the books or anything like that. Feel free to reach out.
Brilliant. That sounds great to me then. So good luck with the forthcoming book, and I'm looking forward to trying that some others definitely. So. Okay, we'll wrap up part 1. Hang around, everybody, because we'll be back in 2 shakes of the dice. See you all in a moment.
Spoken Label.
Hi, guys. Andy N. Spoken Label, the amazing JP. And I'm not going to get this right, JP. JP Choquette, or is it? I'm not even close properly. Right, that's how rubbish my pronunciations are at the best of times. But anyway, it's the writing and quality. So straight over to JP. She's going to do an extract from her current book. Over to you, my friend.
Thank you. So this is the intro of Stillwater Lake. Jessica Brown, Stillwater, Vermont. The rattle of the window pane woke Jessica from an uneasy sleep. The pane shimmied in its wooden frame. She watched it from the slightly sagging mattress. The wind outside whipped at the window and screamed around the eaves. Her heart thundered in her chest. She put a hand there and felt it pound. But why? Had she had a nightmare? She didn't think she'd slept deeply enough for that. She glanced at the alarm clock blearily. Past 3 hours. The green numbers announced it was just after 3. She tumbled into bed after a third glass of wine and a half-smoked cigarette, a little after midnight. She didn't smoke anymore, not for 3 months, not usually. The wind screamed again like a dying woman. Jessica pushed back the blankets and toed around the floor by the bed for her slippers. They weren't there. She must not have unpacked them yet. Either that or she'd forgotten them back home. She shivered and pulled on a ratty sweater. Her grandpa sweater, Brian called it. She smiled, but it quickly fell away. Brian, if only he were here. If only. No, stop it, she said out loud, her voice little more than a mumble. Still, it grounded her, made her remember. Her head pounded, and she put her hand there and massaged her temples lightly. Brian was gone. He wasn't coming back. Time to get used to it. Shuffling to the window, Jessica wrapped the sweater around her tightly. Leaning on the rounded log wall close to the window, she peered out. She'd expected blackness up here in the mountains in the middle of a storm, but a soft bluish glow came from the little grove of pine trees closest to the cabin's front door. Strange. What was making that light, she wondered. An optical illusion, some bit of light from the cabin reflecting onto the trees, maybe. Sitting on the front steps after hauling her stuff in earlier that evening, she'd studied the small knot of trees while enjoying her first glass of wine. They'd felt friendly somehow, safe, not like the rest of the forest surrounding the cabin. The woods here were wild and untamed. Jessica had been camping twice in her life, once in high school and a second time in college, but she'd never been in a forest like this. It seemed to reach out from all around the cabin toward her. Thick, clinging vines threatened to choke her, while huge trees with jagged boughs pointed their accusing fingers at her. Even the low-lying brush underfoot was thick and impenetrable. Jessica shivered at the thought of hiking in the wooden area. The faint glow of the light had dimmed. Jessica pressed her face closer to the glass. The window pane shivered, and Jessica took an involuntary step back. Chicken. She could almost hear Brian's teasing voice. She ran a hand over her face and sagged back against the wall. Bang! Something hit the window hard. Jessica screamed. She looked wildly toward the pane of glass, but only saw a smudge in the next lightning flash. Hands still over her mouth, she looked again toward the bluish light, but it was completely gone. The night was shades of gray and black all around her. The trees swayed toward the cabin and then away. She stepped away from the window, feeling suddenly exposed. What had hit it? A bat, maybe, or a branch? Birds didn't fly at night, did they? Unless it was an owl. Nighthawks? Did they have those here in Vermont? Jessica rubbed her hands over her arms, fingers catching intermittently on the misshapen fibers of the sweater. Her hands trembled like a newborn bird.
Tremendous stuff. Wow, really gripping that. Brilliant stuff. Thank you for that. I really enjoyed that. And I recommend everybody check the book out, definitely. You won't be disappointed with it. So, I want to thank you, JP, now, because that's it for today, guys and girls. Another spoken label. It's been a pleasure. Been really good fun today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Hang around, because I do need to talk to you off microphone, because I've got some other news for you that I've not told you about yet. It's kind of like I like leaving my authors in suspense. So, but anyway, JP, keep in touch, okay? And we shall be speaking to you all soon. So, right, guys and girls, that's it for today. As Don Callis of Impact Wrestling says, stay safe and more importantly, stay damn over. We'll see you all next time.
Spoken label.